has students from all over the world, and some of them are from very, very remote places. I was talking to a gorgeous little girl from the most remote village in Papua New Guinea, and so you have all these people here, and it's wonderful that you're there to be able to support them. That's terrific. Now we have Plenary II. We have 5 speakers in our next section, and they're all very, very interesting. Neda McFarlane is going to represent the Baha'i faith. Betty Magoffin is a registered psychologist and will be speaking from a psychological kind of perspective. Bron Purdy has the most fascinating CV, and I'm a little bit jealous, quite frankly. She has done some amazing things. You'll enjoy hearing from her. Jo Anderson, I met at lunch again after meeting at a yoga class, which is awesome, and she's a leader of a Christian meditation group. And we have Sophie Ryan, of course, who is in year 12 at St Ursula's College. So we'll begin with Neda McFarlane. I'll just read you a brief. Neda McFarlane is very interested in world peace and education. She has many academic qualifications in communications and international relations, and she's worked in the areas of education, community development, immigration and international relations, and more recently as policy advisor on national security and counter-terrorism at the Department of Attorney General in Canberra. Neda is also the author of a virtues-based children's book series. Please put your hands together for Neda McFarlane.
Good afternoon, everyone. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished guests, it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon and an honour to represent the Baha'i community at this praiseworthy gathering, where we're all working towards a common goal of world peace and the spiritual advancement and social advancement of humanity. I would therefore like to take this opportunity to share with you a few remarks in relation to one of the topics of this forum, embracing humanity, a Baha'i perspective. In the last century, the world witnessed startling changes which profoundly altered the character of society. With the simultaneous development of communications at the speed of light and transportation at the speed of sound, the world contracted into a mere neighbourhood, a global village, where people were instantly aware of each other's affairs and had immediate access to each other. Hitherto isolated peoples were brought together, allowing for the creation of new communities, new nations, and new patterns of civilizations. Today, every positive or negative change that takes place in the social, economic, or political realm is felt throughout the world, a testament to the enduring legacy of the 20th century. The depth and breadth of the interconnectedness of the global order cannot be denied, and yet, even with such marvellous advances, with brilliant successes of international and global cooperation, new tensions are created, nations are still at odds with one another, people are convulsed by economic and social upheavals, races feel more alienated than before, and are filled with mistrust and fear, resulting in fragmentation. In short, the world has been plunged into an unprecedented state of worry, confusion, and unavoidable social, economic, and political decline. Indeed, society has lost its anchor. Many scholars have written apprehensively about the fall of civilization and the consequent disappearance of values, the loss of the fullness of inner life, and a technological civilization facing an increasingly serious crisis. In the late 19th century, sociologist Ferdinand Tönnies, for example, theorised that in the development of systems of culture, communities invariably move from a period of Gemeinschaft, where shared experiences and likeness are most important, towards a period of Gesellschaft, where individuals exist in isolation from each other, where there's a strong sense of competition, relationships are contractual, and monetary values prevail. In the late 20th century, sociologist Bertrand Sorokin saw societies moving through ideational, idealistic, and sensate stages, away from spiritual truth and values, towards self-indulgence and material values. Indeed, the past century has taught us that it is possible and perhaps easier for societies to slip into destruction than it is for them to advance along a positive path. In fact, in our current social order, one of the factors identified as crippling efforts to advance along a positive path is a widely held view that human beings are inherently selfish, materialistic and aggressive, and that the differences that divide humanity are regarded as being more pervasive than those that unite. Such beliefs, however, are responsible for and lead to a paralysis of will, a cognitive numbness, as Dr. Huda Mahmoudi, a Baha'i scholar, puts it. This is not easy to reverse, but must be overcome. More importantly, such beliefs and the resulting collateral decline in the social, economic and political arenas reflect the universal consequence of a failed understanding as to the purpose of God for humanity. Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, taught that human beings are created by God to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. But to do this requires unremitting commitment to certain essential universal ideals, the most important of those ideals being the oneness of humanity. The oneness of humanity is the anchorage point, the pivot around which all the teachings of Baha'u'llah revolve, and the ultimate goal of his mission. It is the glue that will ultimately bind a fragmenting world together. As Shelby Effendi, the guardian of the Baha'i faith, wrote, "Unification of the whole of mankind is a hallmark of the stage which human society is now approaching. Unity of the family, of the tribe, of city-state and nation have already been successfully attempted and fully established. World unity is the goal towards which a harassed humanity is now striving. Nation building has come to an end. The anarchy inherent in state sovereignty is moving towards a climax. A world growing to maturity must abandon this fetish, recognise the oneness and wholeness of human relationships, and establish once and for all the machinery that can best incarnate this fundamental principle of its life." Shelby Effendi further elaborates on the oneness of humanity by stating that it is far more than reawakening the spirit of brotherhood and goodwill amongst people, nor does it aim solely at the fostering of harmonious cooperation among individuals and nations. Its implications are deeper. Its message is applicable not only to the individual, but concerns itself primarily with the nature of those essential relationships that must bind all states and nations as members of one human family. It implies an organic change in the structure of present-day society, a change such as the world has not yet experienced. The unity of mankind calls for a wider loyalty, for a larger aspiration than any that has animated the human race. It insists upon the subordination of national impulses and interests to the imperative claims of a unified world. Its watchword is unity in diversity. Therefore, if we are to successfully emerge into the new world order that is coming into being, mankind must cultivate an unshakable consciousness of the oneness of humanity with all that it implies. Freedom, including freedom from prejudice of all kinds, and an end to ethnic and racial strife. Equality of men and women, universal education for all, promoting economic justice for all, the unfettered search for scientific and religious truth, a consciousness of the interdependence of all people on the planet, and the creation of a world-embracing ethic that features universal participation in non-adversarial decision-making through the establishment of a global commonwealth. These principles in the Baha'i view are primarily directed towards effecting a transformation in the spiritual and material conditions of humanity, and will make possible the reorganisation and administration of the world as one country, resulting in the ultimate oneness of humanity. Many of these principles, while considered utopian in the 19th and the 20th century, are now increasingly becoming an accepted reality in today's society. This is because true civilization does not arise from material progress, but rather is founded on transcendent values that hold society together. This is an aspect of spirituality, the need to go beyond one's own material concerns and beyond the self. Service to humanity and a commitment to a deeper level of engagement with each other. And the problems of society are key motivating factors in such a society. Furthermore, in the Baha'i view, such a development is the next and highest step in the evolution of an ever-advancing civilization, the furthermost limits in the organisation of human society. As Baha'u'llah affirmed more than 165 years ago, the well-being of mankind, its peace and security are unattainable unless and until unity is firmly established. As such, universal acceptance of the spiritual law of the oneness of humanity is the fundamental prerequisite for the successful reorganisation and administration of the world as one country. The principle of the oneness of humanity, however, is a unity that is built upon a recognition of and respect for the differences that exist between various members of the human race, whether of colour, race, language, cultural and ethnic background, or otherwise. It is a unity in diversity where differences are recognised and valued, but exist within the wider framework and the underlying and more fundamental oneness of humanity. Closely linked to the oneness of humanity is the oneness or unity of religion. The Baha'i faith views divine revelation not as a static, unique event, but as a continuing process that is a central feature of human history. The spirit that has inspired all the great founders of all the great religions of the past, the manifestations of God, is recognised as the one and the same. The original teachings contain the same ethical and moral precepts. The tenets that change from one religious dispensation to another, however, are the social laws and practices. Thus, religious truth is understood to be relative, progressive, and developmental. Such a perspective implies more than a tolerance for the equality of individual religions as separate entities to be respected in a pluralistic society. It redefines the nature of their relationship to one another and thus sets new terms for the definition of identity that is based on connection rather than separation. An example of this perspective is aptly illustrated in the Baha'i faith. Thus, although the body of teachings composing the Baha'i religion itself cannot accurately be called eclectic, the Baha'i religious tradition includes all of the previous dispensations which are viewed as different stages in the eternal history and constant evolution of one religion, divine and indivisible, of which the Baha'i faith itself forms but an integral part. Furthermore, from a Baha'i perspective, the principle of the unity of religion and progressive revelation restores the unifying role of religion in society, providing a basis for resolving long-standing divisions amongst communities and groups of people. Having spoken briefly about the spiritual law of the oneness of humanity, I would like to briefly outline the practical implementation of this fundamental law and principle from a Baha'i perspective. Far from being an abstract principle removed from real social conditions, the oneness of humanity must be lived in practice, as Abdul Baha, the son of and successor of Baha'u'llah, told a gathering in Europe in 1912. Do not be content with showing friendship in words alone. When you meet a stranger, speak to him as to a friend. If he seems to be lonely, try to help him. Give him of your willing service. If he be sad, console him. If poor, succour him. If oppressed, rescue him. What profit is there in agreeing that universal friendship is good and talking of the solidarity of the human race as a grand ideal? Unless these thoughts are translated into a world of action, they are useless. In considering this responsibility, the Baha'i faith has this vital distinction in that it extends from the realm of conscience and faith to the realm of social action. It confirms the substance of faith not merely as a source of individual development, but as a definitely ordered relationship to the community. In other words, the Baha'i teachings shift the focus of religious practice from an individual salvation or enlightenment to that of the collective progress of humanity as a whole. They address social conditions and global problems as directly related to the individual's spiritual life. Issues of world peace, the equality of men and women, harmony between science and religion, the elimination of prejudice, and the equitable distribution of wealth is for Baha'is inseparable from religious belief and practice. This is demonstrated in the Baha'i community through socio-economic projects and spiritual education activities at the local, national and international levels that can be applied to facilitate the acceptance of the oneness of humanity, thereby fostering the emergence of a more just, secure and sustainable international order. Examples of such projects and activities in the Baha'i communities include study circles, which tap into and motivate the human spirit by allowing participants to examine spiritual matters such as prayers, meditation, life and death, the development of the soul, and the significance of education. Baha'i education classes for children, which are held in different parts of Australia. These classes are also offered in Australian schools as part of the religious education program. The majority of the students who attend these classes are from faiths other than the Baha'i faith. The Junior Youth Program, which is designed to help students to develop their spiritual qualities, or the virtues, as the broader society calls them, their intellectual capacities, and their capacity for service to society. And of course, we have the multi-faith devotionals, which are held by Baha'is in local community centres, in neighbourhoods, in Baha'i homes, Baha'i centres, and the Baha'i Temple in Sydney. These projects are also all held internationally in every country around the world. These gatherings are open to and participated by people of all religious and ethnic backgrounds. At an international level, the Baha'i faith has always taken an active role in various human rights forums and other initiatives developed for international cooperation and dialogue, including the Australian Forum for Human Rights Organisation, the Equality Rights Alliance, the Parliament of World Religions, and the Australian Partnership of Religions. Having highlighted some of the practical implementations of the belief in the oneness of humanity, I will conclude by saying that I've hoped that I've demonstrated today how we as Baha'is embrace humanity and the oneness of humanity from a Baha'i perspective. Although much more can be said on the topic, it is, however, beyond the scope of this talk to talk about Baha'u'llah's social order as Baha'is envision and are committed to it. If you're interested, please feel free to log on to the Baha'i website for more information or contact the Baha'i community in Toowoomba. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Neda, and you will have an opportunity to ask questions later on this afternoon. Our next speaker is Betty Magoffin, who has academic qualifications from New Zealand and Australia. She has extensive experience as a registered psychologist, university lecturer in psychology, and student counsellor. Betty will speak today on the topic Embracing Humanity.
Right, okay, got a loud voice anyhow, so we don't have a problem with that. One of the advantages of having arthritis is I get to sit and talk to you and all the rest had to stand. Isn't that lovely? I have an advantage over the others. I also don't have to hold a microphone because if I did it would just drop off every so often, so I had one clipped on here. All right, I'm going to speak to you today. First of all, I meant to thank the Pure Land Learning College for inviting me to speak, in particular Mr. Hanif, Mei Ling and Lily for organising Lily in the last case for organising my scribbled handwritten diagrams into the most beautiful professional PowerPoint presentation you are about to see. I haven't yet learned how to do that. I don't think I'll bother. All right, so I'm going to talk to you about embracing humanity, and I'll be doing so from the perspective of peace and harmony, but I'll be looking at it from a psychological point of view. I'll just correct one thing. I'm no longer a registered psychologist, not because I got kicked out, but because I had to retire early due to a multiplicity of health problems, shall we say. All right, so if we could have, please, the first screen. Yes, oh, that's good. I know, we're so short-sighted. All right, well, we're going to have a look at 4 points here because the topic is so all-encompassing. It was a matter of, gee, where do I start with this? So I had a look at, well, all right, we better narrow it down. So I narrowed it down to having a look at 4 points only, and they are respect, education, beliefs, and culture. So if we could have the next one, please. Right, with regard to respect, what we're going to have a look at here are 2 models. The first model is known as the OK Corral, and you don't have to dash out and get your cowboy hats and your boots and your akubras because it is not a horse corral, it's a psychological corral. And the second model that we're going to have a look at is called the drama triangle. Now, the OK Corral was invented by Harris, the drama triangle by Eric Byrne. They link very well together in dealing with the issue of respect and relating it to peace and harmony. This is the OK Corral. As you can see, there are 4 squares there, only one of which has a double positive. That is the top left-hand square. That square indicates I'm okay, you're okay. I respect myself and I respect others. Harris believed, this was his philosophy, it's also mine, we are all born with the potential to respect ourselves and respect others. So why is it that sometimes we don't continue with the potential we're born with? Why is it that we end up stepping out into one of these other 3 squares here, all of which have a negative in them? Let's have a look at them. The first of these negative squares on your right there, I'm not okay and you are. This is where I feel better than you are. Now, the person who feels like this, or people who feel like this, think they can do one of 2 things. They can persecute other people, and by that I mean they can bully, harass, treat other people with disdain because they feel better than other people do. Or they think, oh, those poor people, they can't do anything for themselves, I'll have to rescue them or support them. So the people in that square think they're better than the other people. The interesting part about this, though, is that the people in that square only ever feel okay if they've got somebody else that they can persecute or rescue. They don't feel okay otherwise. All right, let's have a look at the next one. I'm not okay and you are. Now this is the reverse. This is the person who thinks, gee, It's all right if people put me down because after all I'm used to that. I've been treated like this all my life, you know, I can put up with that. I'm no good and they are. It's okay for them to persecute me. Or, poor little me, I can't do anything for myself. I have to have someone rescue me or support me. Again, we have the negative and the positive. And then if we go over to the other square, the last square, what we have here is really, really tragic. I'm not okay and neither is anyone else. This can lead to suicide, murder, terrorism, atrocities. Now, why is it that if we're born with the potential to actually respect ourselves and respect others, that we step out of that and end up in one of, or all of, alternately, one of these other three squares? In order to have a look at that a little more clearly, let's have a look at the drama triangle now, which was invented by Eric Bron. And he thought, well, if we have a look at this and we take those three squares that Harris developed, we can clearly see that the persecutor, the rescuer and the victim, who is the I'm not okay, and don't forget the persecutor and the rescuer are also not okay because they've got to have somebody else around to play the role with, if you like. None of those three roles can ever lead to harmony. They can only lead to disharmony. So in order to create harmony, we have to go back to the very first square. I'm okay, you're okay. This is the only square in which we can have harmony in our lives. That is the first part of what I want to talk about. That ends the little bit on respect. I know it's short, but it has to be, all right? Okay, can we just hold it there now, please, Lily? I know it's been a long day, or 2 days for some of you, and I'm sorry I couldn't come yesterday, but I do get very tired with the medication I take, and I want to make sure that you're not tired, so I'm going to wake you all up before we go on to the issue of education. So I'd like you to do a little exercise, please, if you don't mind. You can remain seated because this is a tiered theatre and I don't want everybody falling all over the place. And of course I will abstain, I will not join in at all. Okay, so what I'd like to do to wake you up and get you well and truly ready for the next issue of education, which is a very, very important part of this whole issue of peace and harmony. Right, to wake you up, this is what I'd like you to do. If you don't mind, I'd like you to join in, please. First of all, I'd like you to take a nice deep breath. Okay, now shrug your shoulders. Now touch your toes, or your shoes in this case, don't want the shoes coming off, right? Okay, another deep breath. Shrug your shoulders again. Good, okay, everybody nice and wide awake? Yeah, well, I'm still here. My medication hasn't knocked me out yet, so let's see if I can get through, okay? I'm so pleased I was brought forward from the end speaker to now because I thought my lunchtime medication would probably have me out by 5, so anyhow, we'll see. All right, so if we could have the next one now, please. The model that we're going to have a look at here now in relation to education is a model which is referred to as cognitive behaviour therapy. One hell of a mouthful. Oh, sorry about that. One big mouthful. And it's generally abbreviated to CBT. It actually is a combination of the work of two people developed in order to use with counselling so that the people being counselled would take an active role and not just lie back as in psychoanalysis and talk their heads off, right? This requires them to take an active role, cognitive behaviour therapy. It was first started by Albert Ellis and he called it rational emotive therapy. I had the pleasure of meeting this great man in the 80s, actually, when I was working on this particular material. I tell you, having met him, he's a bit scary, you know. I came away from there thinking, well, I hope I don't have to have too much to do with him. He really is full on, you know. And then a few years later down the track, Aaron Beck came along, and he developed what he called cognitive behaviour therapy. Each of these has 5 steps in them. Now, when I was lecturing in learning theories at QUT quite some time back, I thought, this is rather silly, lecturing in learning theories to university students. We need to teach learning theories in school. We need to teach the students in primary school how to learn what they're learning. What on earth are we doing teaching students at university how to learn what they're learning? So I quit my job, set up in private practice, and set out to develop an educational program based basically on an adaptation of CBT, which was only a 3-step program, epilepsy. Sorry, I have epilepsy. The word's gone. What am I looking for? Process. Thank you. I knew it started with P. Right. Epilepsy is in my left side of the brain and it affects my verbal memory. So apart from the arthritis, you know, as I said, right, okay, never mind. With the whole business of dealing with primary school students and secondary school students, 5 steps just seemed to be far too much. So I decided I'd make it a very brief adaptation of the purist CBT theory. Now, that program I took into primary and secondary schools, and I was able to teach it down at grade 3 level. Now, if I can teach that at grade 3 level, I'm not a school teacher, by the way, I taught the teachers how to do it, people who want to change their lives can actually do so by teaching it to themselves. Now, to prove that to you, I want to tell you what that silly little exercise was all about. All right? So, first of all, we're going to have a look at the first part of this, which is situations and outcomes. Please, Lily. Thank you. Situations, according to the theory of CBT, whether it's the full theory or the basic theory, situations do not cause the outcomes in our lives. What causes the outcomes in our lives is how we interpret the situations we're in. Now, I put you in a situation in which I asked you to touch your toes. I looked around me, and from what I could see, everybody bent down and put your hands on your toes. Now, if you didn't, that's fine, right? Because you were different and you learned to think differently. But those of you who put your hands on your toes can't blame me for doing that. You chose to do it. I did not cause the outcome. You caused the outcome. You brought about the outcome because of the way you interpreted the situation you were in. Now, that issue has been raised by the professor here earlier and by the minister. Was he Anglican or Catholic, by the way? Was he? Didn't say so. I meant to ask him. By the way, I'm a bad Catholic. Gave it up a long time ago. So, how we interpret the situations we're in, that is what leads to the outcome. So when I said touch your toes, you could have put the toes from one foot, stay out of this, you know this little trick of mine. You could have put the toes from one foot onto the toes of the other foot, that's touching your toes, but it's doing it differently. Now, why would you want to do it differently? In a silly little exercise like this doesn't really matter. But let's have a look at real life. If the situations in your real life are leading to disharmony and you're having problems in life, surely you would want to work at trying to change them. How do you change them? You change them by learning to think differently. You have a look at the interpretations in your life, and we will do that now, please, Lily. Thank you. The interpretations are, in fact, our thought processes, and they can be positive or negative. Now, those thought processes, generally speaking, are based on previous learning, expectations, interests, and needs. So when I said touch your toes, automatically, because you've been doing it for so long, you probably, a lot of you said, well, the way I've learned to do it is put my hands on my toes, so that's what I'll do. Or the way I'm expected to do it is the way I've learned to do it, and that's put my hands on my toes, so that's what I'll do. Or, gee, I'm not interested in this. If I bend down, it'll hurt my back, so I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to sit here and see what happens, right? Or you might have said to yourself, my need is to conform with everything that's asked of me, so yes, I'm going to do what I'm expected to do, which is the way I've learned to do it, and that is put my hands on my toes. Or you might have said, blow this, I'm not conforming with this silly little thing, I don't conform with what anybody asks me to do, that's not my need, so I'll just sit here too. Hence, you might have done nothing. You might not have put your hands anywhere near your toes or anything else near your toes. But you could have put your head or your elbows near your toes. Now, that would have been difficult. So why would you look for a difficult way to change your interpretations if you can find a simple way, an easy way that will make life a lot better for you and for the people around you? All you need to do is have a look at your own thoughts and your own interpretations. And if they're positive, the outcomes are going to be positive. If they're negative, the outcomes will be negative. Just a little school example here. Students in the situation where a teacher's looking over their shoulder in the classroom, outcome over here, anxiety, can't do it. Why? What's the student saying? I can't work when someone's looking over my shoulder. Gee, I wish she'd go away. She's making me nervous. Of course she is. Outcome over here, anxiety. Have it back here, keep the same situation. Teacher looking over my shoulder in class. I'll turn and ask for help. I'll be able to find out how to do this. Over here, we ask for help. We're not anxious. And we learn how to cope. So all we need to do is change the interpretation, change how we think about what the situations are in our lives. The situations do not cause the outcomes. We cause them with our thoughts and our interpretations. Now, please don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about earthquakes and stuff like that. I'm talking about normal, everyday situations. Okay, so thank you. That ends the education one, except for this statement here. This wonderful man is still with us. How? I don't know. I think we all thought he was going home to die, and he's still with us. But he actually has made this quote: education is the most powerful weapon or tool which we can use to change the world. Now, before we start changing the world, let's start changing ourselves, if that is what we choose to do. No one's going to make you, but if we want peace and harmony in this world, a lot of us need to bring about change in our lives. And Nelson Mandela, that very great man, has made that, I think, very, very powerful statement. And I hope you can all keep it in your minds. All right, let's move on now to having a look at the next point, which is beliefs. You will see here that I have religious beliefs up first. Could you just quickly switch to the next one now? And then we have non-religious beliefs. The reason I have divided this into two models here is that there are many people in this community here and who have spoken, who have dealt with peace and harmony from a religious point of view. There are those in this community here, and I am one of them, who is not a religious person, But I can speak about peace and harmony too, from a non-religious point of view. So let's go back now, and I want to be able to take both groups into account. We'll go back, please, to religious beliefs. Lily? Thank you. If you have a look at this, you will see that the basis or the foundation for religious beliefs tends to be, first of all, the family. Then we have the school. We have the church, the Bible, God, the spiritual creator, the spiritual being. Those are the extras that follow on from the family if you have religious beliefs. If you quickly switch, please, to the next one, with non-religious beliefs, we see we start with the family, but then, of course, we make our own decision. In my case, it was many, many years later, and I decided no religion for me. However, we'll go back again now to religion, please, Lily. Back one. Oh, you are there, sorry. All right, if you have a look at the motto and the outcome, the motto and the outcome for both can be the same if we choose them to be, and that is in our heads. What we believe, how we interpret the situations in our lives can be exactly the same whether we are religious or non-religious. Treat others as we'd like to be treated. I remember from my early years as a Catholic the words of Jesus, love others as I have loved you. Treat others as I would treat you. I can do that. I can honestly say I do that. And I'm a non-religious person. Those of you who are religious, I know that you say that. Treat others as I would treat you. And let's have a look at the outcome. In both cases, exactly the same. Sound, moral, values and ethics. Now, why is it, I've got 3 minutes left. Why is it that we can't have coexistence between these groups? If the outcome and the mottos are the same, why can't we have coexistence? I'll tell you why. I believe it's because there's a lack of respect. Those who are religious in some cases don't respect those who aren't religious, and vice versa. So, if we want peace and harmony in this world, we have to have peaceful coexistence. We can only have it if, in fact, we bring back respect. I respect myself and I respect you. I have the potential to do it. I may have lost it. I need to get it back. Okay? The Buddhist scholars would say, and I believe this, and I'm no Buddhist, right? But I like a lot of their philosophy. This is one of the pieces that I have read, and it says, it is not so important whether we are religious or not religious. What is important is that we are good people. Good people treat others with respect. That's what brings about peace and harmony. Okay, now can we have the last one, please, which is culture. What I've chosen to do here is have a look at the 4 cultures which I think make up our multicultural society, and I'll have to go a little quickly here. The Indigenous Australians, or our first Australians, many tribes, many dialects, scattered all throughout Australia here, centuries ahead of the rest of us, and yet we came over here from other countries and we tried to get rid of them. Why? Where's respect? It wasn't there. Then in later years came the immigrants. I remember, came the, is that early settlers? Oh, it's on the other side. I meant to say early settlers, thank you. Along came the early settlers. The early settlers came from Ireland, my ancestors from there, many from parts of Britain, all over Europe, etc. Some from China who worked on the gold fields up in North Queensland, the Japanese on the western side of Australia in the pearl diving industry. So the early settlers, many of whom came and settled all over Australia, but tending to be on the coastlines, many of us are descendants of those early settlers. And our ancestors didn't play a very good role in trying to accept the first Australians who were here. They came here before us, and yet we tried again to get rid of them. Not on, no respect. Okay, next came the immigrants. These came over in the 50s and 60s, from what I remember, from all over Europe, many other countries as well, but the ones I remember the most, of course, are those who came from Greece and Italy, in particular the men, because boy, did they have rhythm. Could they dance? They were fantastic. And anyone in my age would agree with me. All right, so they tried to settle in too, right? They were called New Australians, and they were not treated very nicely by the early settlers and the others who were here and the early settlers' ancestors, right? So, and then we move on to the refugees who are here today. And they have come from many countries to escape persecution in their countries. Let's hope that we can open our arms and accept them and welcome them, because they form part of our multicultural Australia and our multicultural city. Now, to end today, I would just like to draw these 4 points together that I started with at the beginning: respect, education, beliefs and culture. I'd like to draw the 4 points together with the following verse. If we treat others with ill will and disrespect, this can lead to emotions which have a negative effect, causing anger, anxiety and frequently guilt. Negative feelings which disharmony has built. But if we treat others as we'd like to be treated too, the lives of those around us can be happier. That's true. For our behaviour would be built on goodwill and respect, because the educational tools we use have a positive effect. So, hang on, there's one more verse, right? What is it? So let's accept religious people and non-religious too. Extend the hand of friendship to all cultures, old and new. Coexistence can then lead to peace and harmony, and this can help us to reach out and embrace humanity. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Now, Bron Purdy is, wait for this, a volunteer for Fundraiser for World Vision. She's a fully qualified yoga, martial arts and Tai Chi teacher, a personal trainer, she was a champion surfer, a masseuse, a radio show host. She was once an international flight attendant and the trainer of international flight attendants, who is currently studying horticulture. Today she's going to speak on finding common ground. Ladies and gentlemen, Bron Purdy. I feel a little embarrassed actually. I didn't know you were going to read my resume. Before I start, I want to say thank you to wonderful speakers I've listened to today. It's been so inspiring. Thank you to the Pure Land College for giving us beautiful lunch and all the lovely gifts that have come our way. So gracious. So I just feel very honoured to be here. I rang the Pure Land Centre a few months ago inquiring about studies. I'm an avid learner, as my resume would suggest. I like learning new things. I like challenging myself physically and mentally in new areas. And this has been at this point in time, amongst like-minded people, just fills me with such joy and inspiration as a human being, because in my plan, in my life plan, I believe it's all come together for this, that we're meant to share what we learn, we're meant to integrate. There can't be any division. I was asked to give a speech on finding common ground, so we'll read what I wrote a couple of months ago. It came from my heart. Please excuse me if I tread on any toes. It's just my viewpoint. I would like to express that. I'm not... what will I say? I'm a student of life. That's the best way to put it. Okay. So, finding common ground. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, respected leaders of many faiths and traditions, for inviting me and my family to beautiful Toowoomba, this model city of peace. I am so deeply honoured to speak today on this subject of finding common ground. My name is Bron, and I have lived and learned within many different religions and spiritual pathways: Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, New Age and Old Age, just to name a few. From these experiences spanning 50 years, I see nothing but common ground. Even though we can talk to God in different ways, different words and different rituals, we are all reaching for the same higher love, the same divine essence. My completeness to God the Creator lies in not only recognising the teachers of one faith and the teachings of that faith, but also the many other God-given teachings of our world. I have felt God, I have learned from God, I've been answered in prayer by God in the multitude of faiths, beliefs and traditions, all beautiful, all love. The Creator, God, has called me to love all, to respect all, and to listen with ears from my heart, not to jump to conclusions, not to practice prejudice or judgment on anyone or any spiritual belief. He's been very strict with me, independent of religion. If I ever began to draw negative and false viewpoints or became pious, he has always wanted me to open my eyes further, look for evidence of him, not to be drawn into misinformation or gossip, the trappings of fear. He asked me to see that all is God. There can be no separation amongst us when we recall or remember or awaken to this. We are all one together and all one in his eyes. We are loved by him equally. Many faiths in their own teachings ask me to love my neighbour. God asks me to love all his children, to practice forgiveness and compassion. People ask me to hear them, to sit with them, to pray with them, to see God in them, no matter what their sacred union may be. I feel him every way and everywhere, even within the faithless. It's the same light. This understanding doesn't set me apart from any faith or from God. This draws me right into his heart. This understanding does something different for me in the way in which I can relate to our world. It brings the possibility of very real, shared peace and unity. It gives myself and others permission to be themselves in the name of our God, in the name that we know, the one that we know in our own hearts. We only need to open the gentleness in our hearts and reach for love together. We are one heart in many unique and wondrous forms. God's language is omnipresent and endlessly creative. Just ask a child. It makes little difference that we pray in another language, another culture, another ritual or tradition. What matters is that we care enough about God, enough about each other, to let the differences just be, to just love each other. From our history we can see that spiritual battles over power and righteousness are harmful and pointless. Realising and changing our views takes courage. We override our fears with the true power, the power of love, and what love can bring to heal this world. We must be willing to not be the only one right about God. Instead, see that all is right because love is right and God's love is right. So accepting and believing in our common spiritual ground can start with something as simple as an observation. If we watch a prayer, it is such a privilege to be in the presence of another's private union or prayer. Watch how it is done. Watch the intent, the eyes, the face, and the peace that envelops the soul in harmony with God. If we listen to how another speaks of their Creator. Listen even if at first the words seem foreign. I'm told that humility is developed when we become better at listening than at speaking. If we humble ourselves, become students of a sacred and endless classroom, now we have quite a lot in common. We are learning about love together. When we sit next to each other in class, we can share knowledge. I was recently told a story that moved my heart so deeply. A young teenage girl born with learning disabilities, struggling to fit into the high school she was attending, was being bullied by another student. This brave young lady took a walking cane to school as she was almost legally blind and had been in and out of hospital since a baby. She was slower and sicker than most. In the course of being picked on, she responded calmly by informing the bully that there was nothing that could be said about her that she didn't already know about herself. She knew she was slow. She knew she was different. Then she took the bully by the hand, inquiring earnestly about her own well-being, and offered to walk her down to the school counsellor so that she, the bully, might get some help, someone to talk to about her problems. Through this moment of courage, the bully experienced much needed support, with school counselling and kindness from the very person she was judging, harassing, and condemning. This altered things dramatically in their relationship. They are now very good friends at school, and they found their common ground. Both needed love, acceptance, respect, kindness, and humility. Something that we can do anytime, anywhere, is to choose love, not fear. Be a listener and a learner and an advocator of peace. Open our hearts to places that we have only just imagined that we could do. Open them. Be strong in our gentleness and be gentle in our strength. Thank you.
With a background in yoga and meditation, Jo Anderson is going to speak about interfaith dialogue in silence. I don't think she's speaking in silence. I think that's the topic. Thank you, Jo.
So, desirous of peace in this world. I'd like to read first our Earth Charter. In the midst of a magnificent diversity of cultures and life forms, we are one human family, one Earth community, with a common destiny. I acknowledge with respect the traditional custodians of this land, particularly those connected to the land on which we stand. I'd like to thank Hanif for the opportunity he has given me today to speak my piece for peace. So for a moment, I'd actually like you to close your eyes I'd just like to have a moment of silence and stillness within this room. So if you feel comfortable, please close your eyes. And just for a moment, I'd like you to be present to your body in this chair, in this room, and to the peace that is in our hearts that we are all desiring. And to be aware of the contact between your chair and your body, and coming fully into this present moment. Taking a calm breath in and a really slow breath out. And for a moment, be aware of the breath in your body. Don't try to change it or control it, just be with it flowing in and flowing out. And each time you exhale, just internally in your heart, say the word peace. And then gently, just letting that word of peace go, but know that its essence lingers in your heart, in your body, and so within this room. And you may like to open your eyes again, or you can keep them closed as long as you don't doze off to sleep. So peace begins in our own hearts. If there is no peace here, there's no peace anywhere. Peace is present in each one of us. We simply need to be present to it, giving it time and attention as we would a fragile young plant. I have found through my daily practice of meditation, when I sit in silence and stillness, that this place of peace grows big within me. It fills me and it holds me. The peace I experience in my meditation becomes part of my life, part of my interactions. It doesn't just stay with me, it spreads like ripples when a pebble is dropped into still water. My meditation originally began as part of my yoga practice and teaching. But what my heart yearned for, though, was to experience that time of silence and stillness within my own Anglican faith tradition. I yearned for that contemplative aspect. So Buddhism was very attractive to me. All I wanted to do was sit in church, silent and still, and simply be with God. And often it's amazing how life flows and how God works. About 6 years ago, I first heard of the world community of Christian meditation, actually originating with the desert fathers and mothers of Egypt and Palestine in the 4th century. Over time, this contemplative aspect of Christianity was lost, to be reignited through the work and inspiration of Father John Main. For me, it was like a coming home, to know that I could stay within my own faith and still have that lovely time of silence and stillness. Father Gary Hart at St James gave me the opportunity to begin a meditation group within the church. So my heart's yearning was answered. I could now sit in church, silent and still, and simply be with God. But it didn't stop there. As Archie Roach sang, from little things, big things grow. From my individual meditation practice, which initially started as with no, I wasn't attached to any faith. It was because of my yoga practice. So from my individual meditation to group meditations within the church and also at the yoga school where I teach, so that's a secular meditation group. Within our group meditations, I began to notice things. I don't necessarily know each person within the groups that I lead, maybe just their first names. What I began to feel after several weekly meditation sessions was a deep sense of connection with the group. It was a sense of unity. It's an enigma really, because we come together, there's no words and there's no actions, and yet community is created. This feeling was so powerful for me that I felt moved to approach Hanif at the Multi-Faith, Multicultural Centre with the idea of an interfaith dialogue in silence. Members of our community from different faiths, with different beliefs or no beliefs, coming together in silence and stillness, connecting and creating unity. Community. Maybe there will be an opportunity to start a weekly interfaith dialogue in silence gathering here in Toowoomba. Not to persuade, not to convert or proclaim, but simply to be together in silence, in acceptance and in peace. I also had another awareness from our times of meditating together. Our weekly meeting at St James is on a Friday morning. There's lots of traffic, there's lots of noise, and we have the school next door, so we hear the school children and the bells ringing. But there our group sits in silence and stillness, creating a pocket of peace within the chaos and the rush of a hectic Friday morning in Toowoomba. I believe peace, which is created within the space of where we meditate, does not stop there. It begins in our hearts, it fills our bodies and our minds and our spirits, spreads into and fills the space where we sit, goes beyond the walls and emanates into the community. This little pocket of peace grows and blossoms, and its fragrance spreads out into the world. When Hanif asked if I would like to speak at this peace forum, I swallowed, hurdled my fear and said yes, because I have such faith in the unifying power of silence and stillness. It also moved me to do a little research. I started with the World Community of Christian Meditation, of which I am a member. They have an outreach program, Meditatio, which, amongst other things, works at fostering interfaith dialogue in the world, verbally and in silence and stillness. People of different faiths coming together to listen, to share, to learn and to accept. Creating unity and connection. It's the breaking down of fear and barriers with the growing realisation we are in fact one human family, one earth community. In the words of Father Lawrence Freeman, who now leads the World Community of Christian Meditation, the practice of silence, simplicity and stillness goes beyond personal enlightenment. It is transformational for our cultures and for our society. And when we meditate together, this silence, gentle, non-judgmental, non-coercive, non-persuasive, does not compromise or merge our important differences which deserve respect, but it has the power to unite, fostering a new level of tolerance and understanding, and a clearer recognition of each other as brothers and sisters of the great originating mystery. World peace starts with me. I practice peace in my own heart, and I become peaceful in my life. I create peace in this world. Peaceability was a word that came to me as I prepared for today. Our ability to create peace begins with each of us. We practice peace, we get good at peace. In our meditation, peace grows in us, between us, and around us. In silence and stillness, we have no one to be and nothing to do. We have nothing to prove and nothing to lose. In silence and stillness, I am. You are. We are one in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Jo. And did you say your meditation group is on a Friday morning at St James? And is anyone welcome to attend? Yoga school. Where's your yoga school? Bron Centre, Wednesday nights for meditation. Lovely, there you go. And I think the Pure Lane College also has from time to time programs of meditation too, which you can find out if you give them a call. Okay, now our next speaker is Sophie Ryan. I think Sophie first became involved with Pure Lane probably about a year ago. Yeah, and since then she's been on quite an adventure. And to tell you a bit about her trips to India, Thailand and Singapore, not all with Pure Lane, please welcome Sophie Ryan.
Aspire not to have more but to be more. In the 1970s, Oscar Romero said this uncompromising determination to do what is right, true and just, becoming the guiding principle in his life. In his actions and in his words, Oscar Romero demanded peace and fought for truth in the world. Today, Oscar's words are a symbol of hope in a world ravaged by injustice, poverty and conflict. Today, his words are a beacon of light and a reminder that the key to peace is in each and every individual striving to be more. My name's Sophie Ryan and I'm 18 years old. I'm a student at St Ursula's College, although I won't be able to say that for much longer, with my final year of schooling rapidly coming to an end. I've lived here in Toowoomba for 8 years now, but my roots as a Toowoomba girl run deep, with myself being the 6th generation of my family to live on the Darling Downs. Next year, I'm looking forward to the new leg on my journey of university and further study. At the moment, it's looking as if this next leg might be based in Canberra, but honestly, who knows? Regardless of where I go to university though, I'm wonderstruck with the world around me and I look forward to exploring every inch of it. And I believe that this feeling is in my blood. My great-great-great-grandfather immigrated to Australia and the Darling Downs in 1860, searching for a better life. And now as I finish high school and look to my future, I like so many generations of my family before me and looking to explore the world and all the opportunities within it. Undoubtedly, many of these opportunities lie outside the safety zone of Toowoomba, and therefore my journey will continue beyond it. But like every generation of my family before me, I have no doubt that one day I'll return to Toowoomba to settle and raise my own family here. And so today, I'd like to talk to you about this journey and this quest for meaning that we all undertake in life and the role that travel plays in that. Not even 2 years ago, I'd never been overseas. But now I feel like a celebrity in that short time span, I've been to India, Thailand, Singapore, and even seen the big smoke of New York. While these experiences have been the spark of my newfound love of travel, They've also provided the foundation of my current beliefs of the world in which we live and the role that I might play in it. While some might say travel makes your own life seem boring, that seeing the Taj Mahal and standing at the top of the Empire State Building makes Toowoomba slightly less attractive, I believe that my travel has had the opposite effect. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that I get as excited at the name of Ruthven Street as I do of Broadway, but I do believe that travel has opened my eyes to the unquestionable beauty of this place we call Toowoomba. An ironic statement considering that Toowoomba means swamp in the Indigenous language. Anyway, I believe that travel has redefined Toowoomba for me. And it's not a lie when I say that Toowoomba is right up there with New York. Let me tell you why. Up until I first went overseas in late 2011, I spent my whole life wishing that I was somewhere else. When I lived in Brisbane, I dreamed of living in New York. When I lived in rural New South Wales, I dreamed of travelling Europe and living in England. How extraordinary life must be over there. And when I lived in Toowoomba, I dreamed of the future in which I could explore Asia, of a future studying at Harvard, and of the future in which I could shop in Milan. My dreams had no end, but I could guarantee that they weren't going to end in Toowoomba. But then I fell into my dream. In November 2011, I travelled for my very first time to Bihar Sharif in India. Now, this wasn't quite as picturesque as my dream had been. My India dream wasn't of me strolling through Delhi on a shopping spree though. In fact, I was expecting the poverty, the pollution and the injustice. I was expecting the stories of malnourishment and of orphanages. What I wasn't expecting was the stories of hope, happiness and content. Among some of the most confronting scenes of poverty I had ever seen, I met individuals who were happier than some of the richest Australians I'd ever met. My entire stay in India was a redefinition of my own life. At one occasion, I sat and received career advice from our tour guide about becoming a doctor. One man, who was a complete stranger to me, but vaguely knew my uncle, offered to teach me Urdu via Skype. I met a woman who showered me in gifts and in rich meals when that meant that she would struggle to provide for her own family for the next month. I rode an elephant that belonged to a man who owned only the clothes on his back that could tell me every single Australian batsman who had ever played India in the cricket. Regardless to say, my stay in India wasn't quite the one I was expecting. But what astounded me most of all was the reality that the people I met welcomed me as if I was a long-lost family member. I experienced similar hospitality when I travelled to Thailand for a leadership camp last year. When we arrived, our host family showered us with flowers, and when we left, they showered us with tears that we had to go. The entire experience was so humbling. But even more eye-opening was the happiness that I saw amongst the poor of Thailand. While in the beachside town of Hua Hin, I discovered that the men who minded the beach chairs and the boys who collected rubbish off the beach for a living were happier than the tourists who dropped the rubbish and were paid to lie on the beach chairs. Extraordinary. I had absolutely amazing experiences in both India and Thailand, and in both these places, I began to realise a fundamental truth in life, that real riches lie in people, not belongings, places or money. I absolutely loved India and Thailand, not because of the places, not because of the Taj Mahal or the Thai temples, but because of the people that dwelled there. The people who shared their stories with me and shared their lives. Late last year, I was accepted into a school exchange program to New Rochelle, an Ursula school just outside of New York. When I heard of this program, all I really heard was New York. and I was ready to sign up like that. Yes, I was excited to see and experience Ursuline life on the other side of the world, but at the very top of my priority list was the reality that I'd be seeing New York. But now looking back on my stay there, when I list the highlights of the exchange, New York is nowhere near the top. I had the time of my life in America with my American family, and that is why I would jump on a plane tomorrow to go back, to see my beautiful American sister, brother and parents. Like in Thailand and in India, my family took me in as if I really was a part of their family. I met their relatives, I made friends at school, and above all else, I fell in love with my Americans. We went into New York City for the very first time a few days after arriving. It was breathtaking. A different spin on the same extraordinary of the beauty of the Taj Mahal and the Fort and Royal Thai Palace. But as I stood at the top of the Empire State Building, looking over the famous New York, the highlight was sharing that experience with my host sister, with my friend. I was astounded. Like India and Thailand, it was a case of people over places. An unexpected discovery, but truly enriching. I found myself walking the streets of New York, and after the honeymoon period of standing in Times Square, I began to notice some familiarities. On the sidewalks, like in India, there were beggars and homeless people, just wearing different clothes and begging in a different form. Like in the Thai markets, I had to hold my bag nice and close so that it would not be pickpocketed. And like in every place, I was surrounded by hundreds of diverse people. I couldn't believe it. I was standing in Times Square in New York, the city the whole world looks to, and I was thinking of the streets of India. Why was I seeing the streets of Thailand in front of me? When we strip back every beautiful city, every magnificent building, and every home within the world, we are left with the same thing regardless of where we are: people. It is people that make the world beautiful, and it is our interactions with people that constitute meaningful interactions. Earlier this year, I was lucky enough to travel to Singapore with the lovely Venerable Wu Chin to attend the unconference on Interfaith Realities and Possibilities. As it was only a one-day conference, I prepared myself for a short-lived experience of Singapore orientated around this conference. The name of the conference was Diversity in Action, and I believe that I can now say that this name extends to my entire stay in Singapore. A trip that was only supposed to be a conference, but for me turned into another life-changing experience like that of India, Thailand, and New York. I was again welcomed like a long-lost family member and enjoyed forging new friendships that I never expected to make. I found myself falling in love with Singapore, not because of the buildings or the Singapore flyer, which was pretty amazing, but because of the extraordinary people I shared the experience with. I got to explore Singapore Zoo on the night safari with Hanif's daughter, Sandy, and her lovely family, especially her two gorgeous sons, who have become like adopted little brothers. I will always cherish the stuffed tiger toy they bought me after we watched the night show together, and when they sat laughing at me as Sandy and I braved the tiny fish that eat all the dead skin off your feet. This Tuesday, I was thrilled when I received a tiny package from Ben and Arthur, the two boys. I spent mere hours with these boys, yet on Tuesday I cried when I read the messages they sent me, telling me of how they missed me and asking how my tiger cub was. These are the experiences that define our lives, not the locations, but the people and the encounters we experience as a result of them. While on this trip to Singapore, I was also lucky enough to spend a whole day with a lovely Muslim couple who took me sightseeing. Again, well, they took me shopping and drove me to see all their favourite places. It was the conversations and the experiences that I had with them that I will always cherish. For lunch, we stopped in Arab Street, where I had Malay food for the first time and absolutely loved it. Then my guides took me over to the Sultan Mosque for midday prayer. Well, they were worried that I would be bored. This was the absolute highlight of my trip for me. In India, I'd heard the call to prayer, and the process of Salat had been explained to me by my uncle. However, there was something absolutely magical in being a part of and being able to witness another religious tradition's practices for myself. Mrs. McMina said that I was welcome to go with her and wait outside as she prepared herself for prayers, and I eagerly obliged. While I sat there, bewildered with the world, a girl came up and sat beside me. I suddenly became very self-conscious, wondering whether I was doing something wrong, sitting in the wrong place maybe, wasn't sure. But instead, she turned to me and welcomed me. She asked me about what I was doing, where I was from, and was eager to hear what I thought of Singapore. While sitting there, I had one of the most meaningful conversations I've ever had. We spoke about our faiths, why she prayed, what it meant to her as a Muslim, and what prayer meant to me as a Catholic. It was such an incredible conversation, and one that I never expected to have when I woke up that morning. And afterwards, we exchanged contact details and now the best of friends on Facebook. It was just another classic example of the rich beauty that people bring to this world, the intrinsic worth of human interactions. So, how did all of these experiences position me to think Toowoomba such an incredible place? It's simple, the people. Like I've already said, I believe the true attractions to all the places that I've been are in the people there. It is people that define Toowoomba as the place it is. As we question how Toowoomba can become a model city of peace, of how Toowoomba can rival and in its own unique way surpass the likes of New York, we must look at what underpins it, the people. Toowoomba is made up of a rich tapestry of diverse and incredible people, and when we manage to unite all of these individuals, recognise the role each person plays in shaping Toowoomba, we'll be right up there with every other great place in this world. It was once said that life is not measured by the number of breaths we take, but by the number of moments that take our breath away. As we each go out into the world to search for meaning and belonging, I hope that you will remember that these moments are underpinned by people, that the true beauty of the world is in humanity, not the structures that humanity has given the world. Thank you.
Before you go away, Sophie, remember she got up here first and said she's Sophie Ryan and she's 18? Today is her birthday. And to thank her for giving up some of her time on her 18th birthday, I think we have, the Purdy College has a small gift for her. Venerable Wishin.
think we're going to do what we did yesterday, which is to have the question and answer time now and then finish up a little bit early. So I'd like to invite our speakers back from this morning and from this afternoon to come and join in the question and answer time. And I'd also like to invite Professor Peter Swammell to come down and chair this session.